Hi guys, today we'll focus on how to make a good LOR, which is letter of recommendation. So, to begin with, you need to be really confident that you're getting a letter of recommendation from someone you trust, and the person that you are getting recommendation from also trusts you. So, talk to the professors that you have already worked with in projects, or at least been slightly more active in class. So, by this I mean that you should have at least had one decent conversation with them about projects that you are passionate about, just so that the person who is giving you the letter of recommendation knows that you can be recommended for further studies or the job opportunities that you are trying to apply for. Even if you have bad grades in the subject, you should tell the professor what motivates you to study the subject. So this is a big doubt in many people's mind, that how do they approach professors in whose subjects they have not performed well in. You should not think about that. You should think about whether the field interests you and if you are really motivated to study it in the future. So despite your bad grades, your professors will help you to get the opportunity that you want to apply for. Third, you should only go to professors that you have seen at least once. So, this is a big mistake that many people make. They go to professors who they are not well in contact with or have not talked to much in their academic life. Well, honestly, what point does it make to get a letter of recommendation from someone who doesn't really know you? So, always choose professors who you have been in contact with. Next, choose the professor based on your subject of interest. Basically, you should always go for professors who have researched on a field that you are interested to study in the future. Because it does not make sense for you to get a letter of recommendation from a professor in management when your study of interest is chemistry. So, sure, you might have gotten better scores in the subject of chemistry, but you want to pursue management. So, you can get your recommendation letter from your chemistry professors, that is well and good, but try to also apply for a letter of recommendation from professors who have taught you management or at least been minor supervisors in that field for you. Next, it is not really important to always go for professors who have a lot of laurels on their title. You should apply to professors who have seen you work and have also worked with you, because they will notice your passion, and even if they are not highly decorated, they will still add a good value to your letter of recommendation. This part of the video deals with how to make a good CV or a good resume. So, first of all, you should list down the projects that you have done in terms of your interest. Basically, how much were you involved in it? It should not be in the chronological order, not necessarily. It should be in the order of how much you contributed to it. So, say that you performed a lot in a project that was done a couple of months ago as compared to the project that you just finished last week. You are allowed to keep the first project as the first one that you see in the CV as well, because when the interviewer asks you about the projects, they will look at the first project and will begin questioning about it. So if you have been passionately working on it, you will have better answers framed for it. Next, if you are trying to create a CV for a university or a company which you haven't done any relevant projects in, it might make sense to get a strongly worded letter of recommendation or a statement of purpose from your previous field of academia or job. So, this basically means that if your future opportunity of application, which might be a university, is asking for a project that you have done in your present position, but you do not have anything to say, then you need to have a very strong motivation letter, because otherwise your status as a candidate in that position will drop drastically. Because if your CV is empty, they do not have much criteria to judge you on. So your motivation letter should be the only thing that uh, really decides your future. We will get to that in another minute, how to make a good motivation letter. But you should always mention, even if it's a small project related to the field that you are about to do next in the future, uh, you should always mention it in your CV. Thirdly, it is a good idea to mention a project or a subject that you were in whose supervisor is ready to give you a letter of recommendation, because that way your letter of recommendation and your resume will go hand in hand and kind of strengthen your candidature, because someone else will recommend you for the same projects that you have mentioned in your resume. And in the eyes of an interviewer or someone who is analyzing your application, it is a very good thing to see. This part of the video deals with how to make a good statement of purpose. So, in order to write a good statement of purpose or a motivation letter, you should always start with how you began your education, the real kind, where you actually began to enjoy learning. By this, I mean that during your classroom studies, it might be um, it might be boring to mention how you were inspired by a few professors or a few chapters. Rather, you should mention about the exact moment where you felt like your interest had been kindled in a certain domain of study. You should also add instances or examples of academia where you realized that your interest was peaking. By this, I mean that you should always have something to talk about in your motivation letter, which strongly supports your point that the subject that you are about to study is actually your interest. Next, you should research about the company or the university that you are applying to, and you should always mention the projects or the professors or even the industry leaders over there that have meant something to you, because this shows that you are actually interested in going in that environment, because you have researched about it and are also interested in the kind of people employed over there and also the projects that they have been involved in. As a tip, you should always go to the web pages related to the university or even the job position that shows the mission and vision statement of the place. You can adapt your statement of purpose from that. The next tip is to always create a statement of purpose which is less than 1 or 1.5 pages. You should keep it concise and only elaborate on how you contributed to the big projects that you have mentioned in your CV, basically the ones that were written first. So, this is to avoid a long storytelling session and keep it interesting and to the point. In case you do not have things to talk about, basically, you do not have projects to mention, then write down why the task is important in the future for you and how you want to be a part of it. This might become a little emotional part in your statement of purpose, but sometimes having that also helps, because the person who is reading it needs to be convinced that you are in for the hard work and want to prove yourself in that domain. Thank you for watching.